If you're into wireless video, I think you might find this new field monitor from SHIMBOL pretty damn interesting. It's their ZO600M 5.5-inch wireless field monitor. SHIMBOL sent me this monitor about a month ago to kind of put it through its paces and tell them what I thought of it. Now, this is the part of the video where I say SHIMBOL didn't pay me any money, they're not sponsoring this video in any way. These are all my own opinions, good, bad, and the ugly. Now let's talk about the biggest feature that makes this monitor a little bit different from all the other ones on the market. It has built-in wireless video transmission. It's nice and bright at 1000 nits. And there's a couple of other little features in here that make it kind of an interesting monitor. You know, the build quality of this monitor is actually quite nice. Seems a little bit of a mix of metal and plastic. Feels really solid in the hands. And actually the build quality of this, in my opinion, is better than some of the more well-known companies and their small field monitors. I'm not going to name any names or anything, but, you know, suffice to say, I think it's a really, really nice build. So let's actually start using this thing so you guys can decide for yourself if this is something you want to pick up. At the top of the monitor, you've got your power button and 3 function keys that you can assign a function to, like focus peaking or false color. And that nub part at the very top, I'm assuming that's where the wireless antennas are built in. At the base of the monitor, you've got 2 speakers there. You have a DC out plug, and then your standard 1/4-inch mount there. Now on one side, you've got your DC in port, you have a headphone jack, and then your HDMI in and out ports, which is nice to see that you can do HDMI pass-through with this. On the other side, you've got a USB-C port. Now, I don't believe that's for powering the monitor. I think that's just for firmware upgrades. And then you have a TF slot, which is just a micro SD card slot. The monitor actually comes with a little, is it 32 gig? Yeah, 32 gigabyte Kingston micro SD card. And we'll talk more about what you can do with that when we start getting into the software of the monitor. And on the base, you've got 2 Sony NPF battery mounts. The button to eject the batteries is much better than on other similar price field monitors. And it's a dual battery slot, and yes, they are hot swappable. So if one battery dies and switches over to the other one, plop one out, put in a fresh one. Grab my little A7C rig here. Now, this is actually a setup I used recently on a real estate shoot I did. I just had the monitor connected to the camera here, and then I had the real estate agent in the other room watching from an iPad. So as I moved through the house, he would kind of trail behind me a little bit and just kind of watch what I was doing. He was really impressed with that setup. Do keep in mind though, when transmitting from the monitor to an iOS device, and by the way, the mobile app, iOS only, there's no Android for it yet, your range is going to be 300 feet. Just something to keep in mind. It will go through a couple walls depending on the thickness of those walls, but the agent was always within, 2 or 3 rooms behind me, and he said he didn't have any problems with it blinking out on him. So let's turn on the monitor and the camera and we'll start going through the software features. So now we'll go through actually using the monitor here. Single tap brings up the menu system. At the top corner, you've got your source indicator, which we're obviously using HDMI at the moment. You have a wireless signal strength indicator. Right next to that tells you if you're in transmit or receiver mode, what channel you're on. You have the resolution frame rate you are shooting with. Another indicator just tells you, I guess, if you're using an SD card or not. And then at the far right here, you've got battery level indicators for both batteries. So we'll just move through the menu system here. First menu is your source menu. So this is where you can select if you're using HDMI or if you're using wireless input. You also have a QR code here that you can scan with your iPad to quickly connect the app to the monitor. And then you have the different channels that you can transmit on. Next menu over are all your different scopes. You have, of course, your waveform, your RGB parade, histogram, and your vector. Now you can also adjust the opacity of each one of those scopes, simply dragging it back and forth there. You cannot change the location of the scope, so where they come up, that's where they're staying. And I believe you can have a maximum of 3 scopes up at one time. If you go to use the 4th, it's going to turn off the previous one. We'll turn those off, and we'll say hello to Opal. Hello. Next over, you've got where you can set your markers, safe area. This also has an anamorphic D-squeeze, 2x, 1.8x, 1.65, 1.5, and 1.33. And you have a center marker as well. You're shaking the whole table with that. Okay. Next menu over is your focus peaking. You have 4 different colors to choose from. You can also adjust the sensitivity of that peaking. So we'll turn it on red, and we'll max out the sensitivity. There you go. Next to that is where you can turn on or off the ability to zoom in. So right now it's off, and you can see nothing's happening when I go to do the double tap. Nothing there. So let's go back to there, turn zooming on, and now you can zoom in. So we'll go back and we'll turn zooming back off again. Next you have where you can set your zebra patterns. You can adjust the maximum and minimum levels for those to kick in. Next to that, you have your false color. This is something I constantly use when I'm setting exposure. You can also choose to set your image to monochrome, which can make it easy when you're trying to do some manual focus. Your next menu over, you have your, where you can select the different LUTs that you can load into. You copy those to your SD card and you can load those individual LUTs onto here. You have your gamma curve. You get a 2.2, 2.4, and 2.6. This is not something I usually mess around with. You can set whether you're viewing your image in HDR mode or not. And then you can also adjust the actual color temperature of the monitor between 5600, 6500, and 9600. Now, the next feature is one that I have a little trouble with, and maybe it's just not quite ready for prime time yet, but there is a teleprompter feature built into this. You basically take a text file, copy it to the SD card, and you can load it up on here. So I've got one on there. Choose this one here and click confirm. It says loaded successfully. Back out. And then if you hit play and then tap the screen and it pops up, what I haven't been able to figure out how to do yet is to have it to do that slow scroll that you would normally see with teleprompters. You have to actually kind of reach over and flick it up. Also, word wrap doesn't seem to be working either. I don't know if that was a problem with my text file or something in the monitor. So I didn't have a ton of luck with this, but maybe I was doing something wrong, or maybe this is just a feature that's not quite ready yet, and we'll see an improvement with a firmware update. Next to that's an interesting little feature. The monitor can actually record to a MP4 file, the feed coming in off of either your HDMI or your wireless. It's a fairly low bitrate file, I think around 10. I don't think this is something you would want to like color grade or anything like that, but I could see the files being useful for something like social media. And you could also, of course, change the file naming of the file that you're recording to. Next over, we have a lock screen, just nice and simple to use so that you don't accidentally tap and bring something up. I can see that we still have the teleprompter menu going. We want to stop that. There we go. And then all the way over here in the bottom right corner is sort of like a system settings for the monitor. You can adjust the brightness, the contrast, saturation, sharpness of there. You can even do an RGB adjustment. So you can really dial in the colors for the monitor. Under that, we have things like your volume control and your backlight. You can also enable the DC out port. It's like by default, it's turned off. So if you want to be running something off that DC port, you need to turn that on here in the software. Next is where you program in the different functions that you want to assign to the top function buttons. I said buttons, very weird. And then a final system menu where you have things where you can change the language, you can look at the version number. This is also where you would do the firmware update. But the most important feature in here, I think, is where you can change the wireless mode of the monitor itself as a transmitter or a receiver. And that's basically the setup for the monitor. I really like the menuing system. It's very intuitive. Reminds me a lot of the Atomos Ninja. It's with the bottom row here, it has a very familiar feel to me. A lot better than some of the other lower priced field monitors I've seen. In fact, this might be probably my second favorite menu system. Let's say third behind Small HD being the best and the Atomos monitors being after that. Nice, simple to use, very intuitive. It didn't take me long to get up and running to navigate through the menu systems of the monitor. Connecting with the app is really easy. Simply fire up the SHIMBOL app. We'll click on Connect to Device. On the monitor, we will get into the wireless menu section here. There we go. And there's our QR code. Back on the app, we will click Scan QR code. We'll hold that up. And now it requests to join. And in a moment here, we should see everything coming through. And now we have our connection here. Now the next bit I'm going to record here, initially I was doing a screen record on my iPad. Now this is only a 7th generation iPad. My iPad seemed to have a problem running the SHIMBOL app and screen recording at the same time, so things were looking stuttery. So the next bit that you're going to see, I'm just going to be using my camera to record the screen of my iPad, just so we don't see any of those hiccups or stuttering issues. So here's the app. It's very simple, straightforward to use, nice responsiveness. Click once to bring up the menu system. At the top there is Exit. Underneath that are the different settings you can change, like your brightness, contrast, sharpness. This is also where you adjust your focus peaking sensitivity, as well as your zebra thresholds. Under that, you have where you can put your markers up. You can change the image to grayscale, put a center mark in. At the bottom is the teleprompter part of the app. Again, since I was having problems with that with the monitor, I didn't mess around with that. Then you have where you can turn on your focus peaking. You can turn on your zebras here. Here's where you have your zoom. You can zoom into 2x and then to 4x. At the bottom, you can take basically a screen grab of your image here. Now at the top here is where you can send the output of this to a RMTP server for live streaming. Turn to cancel that. Just a very basic, straightforward application. Would have liked to have seen false color in here. It's a bummer that that's not in here. Lastly, I wanted to mention here that the 600M does also work with SHIMBOL's 600S wireless kit. So for example, you could use the 600S receiver mounted to like a field monitor and pick up the wireless feed of the 600M. Vice versa too. You could mount the 600S's transmitter on your camera, put the monitor into receiver mode and pick up the wireless signal that way as well. Now, having said all that, I wanted to put up a quick diagram to make things a little clearer of the 3 common setups that SHIMBOL advertises with all this gear here. In the first setup, we have a 600M transmitting to 4 different iOS devices, receiving that wireless video signal from the monitor all at the same time. In the next setup, we have the 600M transmitting to a single 600S receiver, which can be attached to something like a field monitor, along with 3 iOS devices. And in the last setup, we have the 600M transmitting to 2 600S receivers and 2 iOS devices. So as you can see, there's a number of different configurations you can use here. Let me know if you've got any questions about the monitor down in the comments. Appreciate you taking the time to watch. Have a good one.